what I see as a compass or even a path for congregations and Unitarian Universalists to do the climate work as congregations. This gift can be created or has been created, by the group of UU volunteers, the Green Sanctuary Advisory Board under the steady guidance of Nancy King Smith. I would not be here presenting to you without her leadership and the expertise and dedication of both the board and the extraordinary support of Allie Tharp and the Unitarian Universalist Ministry for Earth. So deep gratitude. Our collective goals in Green Sanctuary include inviting every person to engage your gifts, and to do that work connected to and led by the deep experience and the brilliance of those most impacted. We've got to work in creative and powerful ways for a just transition away from fossil fuels and extractive economies. So much of that creative and powerful work blooms from systemically oppressed and historically resilient people. So we learn and move together. But before launching into an overview of the Green Sanctuary 2030 program, it's important to remember our unique role as a faith community. And I welcome Sahar to help us remember to do this work embodied in the love of life and grounded in gratitude and interconnection. Welcome, Sahar.
Thank you so much, Karen. My name is Sahar Musin-Lothman. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I'm actually located in Germany, and I'm a guest speaker here for UUMFE. My work is primarily as a trauma steward and somatic informed diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant and teacher. So we're going to be working with our imaginations today. And we spend so much time in our activist work talking about what we don't want to continue, that we often forget to vision a better future. I'm going to take you on a journey, on an odyssey. So I invite you to buckle in, relax, to absorb this perspective. I'm going to start by sharing the writing of Adrienne Maree Brown, who wrote the book Emergent Strategy. And this is what she says of imagination. We are living now inside the imagination of people who thought economic disparity and environmental destruction were acceptable costs for their power. Imagination has people thinking they can go from being poor to a millionaire as part of a shared American dream. Imagination gives us borders, gives us superiority, gives us race as an indicator of capability. I often feel I'm trapped inside someone else's imagination, and I must engage my own imagination in order to break free. All of this imagining in the poverty of our current system is heightened because of scarcity economics. There isn't enough. So we need to hoard, enclose, divide, fence up, and prioritize resources and people. We have to imagine beyond those fears. We have to ideate, imagine, and conceive together. We must imagine new worlds that transition ideologies and norms so that all of us can be seen as potential cultural and economic innovators. This is a time travel exercise for the heart. This is collaborative ideation. What are the ideas that will liberate all of us? The more people that collaborate on that ideation, the more that people will be served by the resulting worlds. So we're gonna play with imagination. Yes, play. I want you to access that childlike part of yourself that never forgot how to daydream, the one that would play pretend and make drawings with purple skies. And I invite you to drop into the space of boundless possibilities where anything can happen. Be willing to believe that it can happen. Before we sit in for a minute, I'm gonna invite us again to do a little bit of cheek shaking. So we're just gonna, you can stand as willing and or able, and you're just gonna shake your body a little bit. And the reason we do this, all mammals in nature do this right after they get away from the lion, because it really is a way to process trauma in the body. So it's a great little transitional exercise. Yes, let's shake it all off. And then sit back down. I invite you to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. We're going to begin by grounding. So I want you to imagine what the center of the earth looks like to you. It could look like fire, a solid ball, a crystal, an ocean, anything that is real to you. Next, imagine what you would use to connect yourself to it. And you could use a rope, a vine, a bungee cord, a waterfall, a beam of light, whatever is real to you. And you want to use this grounding cord to connect your whole abdominal area. From the bottom of your sternum to the bottom of your pelvis, side to side, front to back, to the center of the earth. Notice how your body feels as you remain connected to the center of the earth. Notice if grounding affects your point of view. I want you to imagine yourself now fully encased in a bubble. Imagine that this bubble forms a layer of protection over you. Then I want you to imagine a blank screen in your mind, like a movie theater. Think of a future where we have successfully made the just transition. We're stepping now with our daydream muscle into a sustainable future, a place where the earth, society, and community are in such a way where harmony and regeneration are permeating themes. And this can look like anything for you, but I do want you to take a moment to reflect on this nourishing future, to remember why there's hope and need for action. Now freeze the scene in your movie theater and imagine on the screen appears the correct symbols or colors to own your space or enhance that reality. The first thing you get is always your intuition. Now you take the picture of this symbol, of this color, and you put it inside your bubble, intending that it goes 360 degrees around you. Notice how you feel. Then imagine letting that situation come to life and observe how the situation unfolds for just a moment. Now let's do a little bit of earth breathing. I'm going to ask you to breathe in through your heart, thinking of joy. Now breathe out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. One more time. Breathe in joy through your heart and out through your grounding cord, deep down into the earth. Now I want you to imagine your spirit rising out of your body encased in a bubble. I want you to use yourself in this space to travel backward in time. Think of a poignant moment in your life. Picture your astral form floating above as you visit this time. And now slowly float back to the present moment. Hover above your body. And at this point, I'm going to ask you to travel forward in time to some point in the future. Come on, play with me. Just give it a try and observe. Don't overanalyze. Now, again, travel back to hover over your body. I want you to use your imagination to project another screen out in front of your astral form. This one is smaller, like the size of a TV. And on it plays that scene of the just and sustainable future we are working toward building. Really suss out the details now. I'm going to ask you some questions to help guide the crystallization of your vision. Feel free to explore some and allow others to float away for another day. If you feel called to journal rather than meditate, feel free to do so now or afterward. There is nothing to fear. You will not fail or miss anything by allowing only so much in at this time. What does a just future look like? Imagine a civilization in right relationship with the earth, a love of our non-human fellow beings that deepens our capacity to care, loosens all tensions, strengthens our bones, and thickening the blood pumping through our hearts. Where do we get our energy from? Is it true what they say? Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It It is an abundant, ever available resource that we now tap into effortlessly and without greed. How do we get around? Further remove limitations. What is done with our waste? Everything can be a source of replenishment. How is our food produced? How do we bless the hands that feed us and become more attuned to the regenerative cycles of life? How are conflicts managed? Imagine a world where everyone is valued. Who are your neighbors? Who's in your network? Where do you go when you need help? How do those with additional needs get them met? Imagine a world where no person is illegal. How does it feel? Are there borders? How are needs met? Who is in charge? How are we in right relationship with traditional occupants of this land? How are we engaged in trust? How do we share the blessings to which we are privileged? What are our processes of reconciliation and moral repair? How have we made amends for the domination we've inflicted with our privilege? And if you're a member of a marginalized group, how have amends been made to you? Imagine a world where everyone is safe and fed and sheltered. Everyone is nourished and nourishing with a deep knowing that there is enough. There is no lack, no hunger. No, we do not hunger, not for physical sustenance or emotional or spiritual. We are fed. Project all that you see onto the screen in your hands. And I want to share what I see. I'm in an old growth forest with others. We're taking time to both clear brush and nourish the ecosystem, as well as to be together in community and enjoy nature. We are sitting in council circles to discuss harm. And at the end of a long day, we lay out a massive picnic potluck and share stories around a fire about the history of powerful, positive change. We are a rainbow people. Once you hold this image in the screen in your hands, you notice 3 dials on the side of the screen. You reach forward to turn one, and you realize that it controls brightness. So you play around with it. You turn it down so it's a dull shine, and then up so bright. All you can see is bright light. And then you find that middle setting where you can tell it's just right in its vibrancy. And you leave it, going on to the next dial. The next dial is sound. And you realize it's turned down. As you start to crank it up, you hear birdsong, the laughter of children, and the breeze through the trees. And the last dial is feeling. And as you crank it up, you feel your heart crack open like a cardamom shell. It lets out sweet fragrance like roses that caress your spirit and allows you to know this future deep in the center of your being. Now that you notice the screen which is held in your hands is vibrating, the resonance of which is rippling through you, shifting your cells. Existing as we are now in a bubble above our physical bodies, let's start moving forward into the future again, toward our chosen time in the horizon. When we get to that perfect moment, I want you to drop the screen into your future. As you return to your body, you notice timelines folding into themselves and others blooming out as your resonant vision alters reality and our shared future. Now that you have returned to hover over your body, I want you to visualize yourself ascending to the cosmos. Again, this can look like anything to you. For me, I ascend to the galaxies, and my body is transformed to moving geometric rainbow light. Know that while we are of the earth, aspects of our being are transcendent. In this space, I want you to feel into that which energizes and inspires you as leaders in the work your spirit is called to do. Next, visualize yourself in a place of golden light. This space fills you with light, bright energy, raising your vibration. This light nourishes you with everything you need, all of the resources, all the minerals and vitamins, all the love and joy, everything you need to feel full, nourished, grounded, and inspired in your justice advocacy. You recognize that this light is sourced from within, that it is a reflection of your own skills and contributions burning bright, even if untapped. The nurturer, warrior, and thinker aspects of being manifest as light. Bathe in the essence of this for a moment. Let's do more earth breathing. I am nourished and nourishment. Breathing joy into our hearts and breathing out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. I am nourished and nourishment. Breathing joy into your heart and breathing out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. Next, you find yourself in a cave. This is the symbolic cave of the womb, the empty creative center from which all is born. In this space, I want you to reflect again on what called you to this work. Let's do some more earth breathing. What called you to this work? Breathing joy into your heart and breathing out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. What has called you to this work? Breathing joy into your heart and breathing out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. At the end of the cave is a waterfall. Passing through the waterfall of release. Take a moment to focus on your struggles and roadblocks in environmental justice advocacy. How are you dealing with them? And are you ready to move past the obstructions? Many things are external, but even still, some blocks live within. What can you let go of? Let your spirit speak one thing to you. One thing it's in the process of letting go of to make space for confident engagement in justice work. That lingering thing that once it's shed will allow you to step into the light and be more complete and connected to your highest expression. Can you understand that space you make in your psyche and in your life for justice work translates and equals more space for joy, peace, accomplishment, space for more of what your being is meant to do in this life? Let's do some more earth breathing. What inner struggles can you release? Breathing joy into your heart and breathing out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. What inner struggles can you release? Breathing joy into your heart and breathing out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. The other side of the waterfall leads you to a meadow with rainbow wildflowers. Taking time to inhale the celestial scent of the flowers, dancing and whirling, you are magnetized to the center of the meadow along with the other participants here. But before you reach the center, you are stopped at an invisible force field, the field of fulfilling. Recognize in faith a deep inner knowing that all will be well, but that your effort, your gifts, and contributions are required. Which aspects of your being are called forward in this work and at this time? Many of us walk with confidence, stay the course with consistency, or push forward with deep engagement. What gifts do you recognize in yourself which contribute to lessening climate suffering? What do they look like? And are you ready to step more fully into them? Let's do just a bit more earth breathing. What are your gifts that lessen climate suffering? Breathing joy into your heart and breathing out through your grounding cord, down, down, deep into the earth. Joy in the heart, breath out to the earth. Now, as you speak these self-truths, you effortlessly pass through the force field, moving toward the center, where you are met by your congregation and communities. Taking a few more breaths, return to your body and the present moment. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Open your eyes with a soft gaze. And I'm just going to guide you through a 1, 2, 3 to reorient yourself to the space. What are 3 things that you can see in your environment right now? Let's start with something really close, like your hands in front of your face, or something really far, like the far wall. Can you see trees swaying in the wind or something green in the room? What are the 3 things you feel? The ground below your feet, your butt in the seat, temperature of the room. Can you feel your heartbeat? What are 3 things you can hear? Can you hear my voice, or the squeakiness of your chair, or the background sound of your families? And I'll just share a quick poem with you. Replenish, we go on, we go on. Canoe under hot sun. The upturned paddle guides liquid to our dry mouths. Water within us, water surrounds us. A great mystery, our becoming dry at all. Replenish, replenish. We must be replenished. The water within and without. All that fills us, all that surrounds us. The great whistling pines, the tenacious beaver, the ancient loon, the rush of the young eagle's wings as it dips low over our canoe. Replenish. The eyes bathed in this delicate solitude, this trembling eternity, called back in mid-sweep, only to be assessed by green, parched eyes. Replenish. Each shriveled heart, which has its moments only at events set aside for its song, but cannot fly for the connection between the rock and the human body. The heron's wings and the hope in our souls. We go on, we go on. Our paddles dance with the lake water to the music in our throats. We will grow dry again, perhaps leap into the water, a small and symbolic celebration of a great and endless task, which gratefully, gracefully undertaken might allow us to go on and on and on. Thank you.
This is no ordinary work that we are called to. I am Karen Brammer, and I am so grateful, Sahar, for that grounding and that story and that vision. What I'm going to do now is welcome you all into a presentation that Susie Novak put together with my assistants that will walk you through much of what we hope you will learn about the Green Sanctuary program. And then we will go on with Doris and Allie to remember the context of so many other ways to be involved. But welcome now to the Green Sanctuary program. We are grounded in love of life and justice, and that is what this program hopes to walk and to move and to dwell in. We'll talk about GS 2030 for about 20 minutes, and then Allie and Doris will join us. So please remember that you can access this slideshow later and the brochure of the many, many Unitarian Universalist resources that you'll see referred to in this slideshow. So here is what compels so many of us into climate work. We pay attention to science, which says that to prevent increasingly catastrophic and irreversible trends, global net emissions of carbon dioxide need to fall at minimum 45 degrees from 2012 levels by 2030. Hence the new Green Sanctuary name, GS 2030. This program is also grounded in the fact that Black, Indigenous, and people of color have known for a very long time that environmental injustices most impact marginalized and historically oppressed people, often referred to as frontline and fence line communities. GS 2030 invites Unitarian Universalists to interrupt oppressive systems by bringing our skills and our resources to support the leadership of those most impacted communities. Climate change equals environmental injustice. GS 2030 is grounded in this reality. So welcome to GS 2030. The program calls congregations to bind together mitigation, resilience, and justice. We know that we must, as rapidly and as justly as possible, reduce and eliminate fossil fuel dependence. We know that we must support the greater community and world in which we live. We must help adapt to the current and the increasingly devastating impacts of climate change. We know we must do this work in collaboration with frontline and fence line communities to disrupt colonial and white supremacist systems and to co-create a more just, creative, and beautiful life now and for each generation to come. Green Sanctuary provides structure, leadership, and support in broad collaboration for the UU faith community to engage in an ambitious environmental and climate justice movement that seeks to live fully our 7th and 8th principles and achieve our vision of a sustainable and just world for all. Congregations begin in different realities, and so they themselves must imagine what their own transformation will look like. And so the vision of the Green Sanctuary 2030 will be that congregations transform based on what they know of themselves and what they know of the realities within their larger communities in the world and what their particular gifts are. So we also are committed to anti-oppressive climate work and to mobilization. We've got to leverage our collective work to have the greatest impact. And so thinking about congregational transformation, we think in terms of the long haul. Now think about the COVID-19 pandemic and how it transformed our congregational life. Understand that climate change, climate devastation, and climate chaos already has and will many more places cause an equivalent level of disruption. So think together as a congregation what the impacts of climate disruption are likely to have on your congregation and your community, especially from the perspective of frontline communities. And so GS 2030 invites congregations to think in terms of a long haul, to deepen emotional and spiritual resilience, so necessary to overcome despair, denial, and rage, and work in support of love and life. And congregational transformation means that we prepare now for increasing climate impacts, not waiting for the crisis to happen if it has not become obvious in our own congregations. Transformation also means that we work to end fossil fuel dependency now and as quickly as possible. And that everyone in our congregational life will do their part. Every committee, every person who has a connection to the congregation has gifts that are relevant to all that we need to do in order to transform ourselves. And so the Green Sanctuary program is designed to have 3 different particular goals, and they intersect, and congregations will see their work intersecting through mitigation, justice, and adaptation at different levels and in different ways. And in some congregations, they are all connected quite strongly. And so I'm going to ask Susie to show some more examples of how some of these projects have bloomed in different congregations. Susie, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can.
Excellent. So as Karen explained, congregations are invited to create 3 campaigns. the first thing is all about mitigation. We have got to reduce our own carbon footprint and that of our communities and our greater world. So you will be doing a campaign that reduces your own carbon footprints. As you can see, of course, the first thing many people think of is solar panels, which is a super example and a great idea, but certainly not within the capabilities of every congregation. First Universalists of Denver, as you can see, created a carbon positive building. They did a variety of things and arrived at, and it looks like they're very proud of it too, that they are a carbon neutral congregation. This is an aspirational goal, but you know, in your process, you will develop a series of action steps that you will be able to document your reduction in carbon. Very exciting. Many congregations will engage in civic action. One of the things that is the biggest difference between the old version of Green Sanctuary and this one is we really want people to become activists in whatever way they feel comfortable. And as you can see and have learned today, there are a whole host of actions that you can get involved in right within the UU world. Never mind all the interfaith and sectarian, non-sectarian groups. The two we were just going to highlight here is our own Doris Marlin's Strengthening Local Climate Commitments, where you're actually working with local governments at the ground level to help them honor their climate commitments. And then at the very highest level, Unitarian Universalists are leaders in the Citizens Climate Lobby, where the goal is to pass legislation that would basically put a fee on carbon emissions. And there's all kinds of actions to be done in between, but those are two examples.
Sorry to rush you, Susie.
No worries.
So that was mitigation. So much more could be said. So much will be said and done together. If you decide to work with Green Sanctuary, there will be lots of companionship in the process if you choose. This next piece is about resilience and adaptation. And this is on a congregational level, a human systems level beyond your congregation, and also an environmental level or an other species, non-human species level. And so starting with a congregation, my way of thinking about adaptation nowadays is that each congregation will need to adapt to particular impacts of increasingly severe climate conditions. Our Western congregations had to deal with fire crises. Many of our Southern and East Coast have had to deal with a great deal of flooding. So those particularities will be different for different congregations. But in most cases, in all cases, we need to deepen our resilience, which in my understanding is that we've got to become deeper in our spiritual lives, in our relational, the fabric of our relationships, inside the congregation and outside the congregation, and also in our infrastructure, so that we can respond to things as they change, because they will change in unpredictable ways.
So here are some examples. The UU Concord of New Hampshire has built a food garden. Numbers of congregations are doing that, and they are just ensuring the food security, perhaps of their own congregation, but also perhaps of their neighbors. North Shore Unitarian Universalist in Louisiana has installed a labyrinth, and again, that's a very common step that congregations take, a welcome opportunity for some peaceful reflection. And that's the other way to do that is to have a meditation garden, such as the UU Rest in Virginia. I chose these examples, and there are so many more, because for me, a faith community has that unique ability to restore our hope, just as if you were with us in this morning's opening celebration, that's what it was all about, was using our faith as a source of hope. And that's, you know, when I get weary and when I get discouraged, I need some place to go and be replenished, as Sahar was explaining. And so that's what congregational resilience is about. We have to strengthen ourselves so that we can fight for the long haul.
When we think about other systems of humanity beyond our congregational walls, here's the fire that was so present actually all over the world. I'm thinking Australia, and I'm thinking about the West Coast in particular. But each congregation will have its own community and region in which you dwell, where you understand that the climate changes will be impacting those around you in particular ways and unique ways, most likely. And so you need to be in communication, identify and be in collaboration with the actions of the people who are most vulnerable in order to increase their capacity according to their priorities to withstand climate change as it increases in its impacts. Again, examples of doing some of this work would be disaster preparedness and response and recovery. And I just saw an advertisement recently from the Movement for Black Lives talking about a very specifically person of color and Black organized immediate response system to crises. And that is just one example of the many ways communities of color, Black communities and Indigenous communities have had to be resilient for a very, very long time.
So this particular example comes to us from Wichita, Kansas. The frontline groups there were living with a huge amount of air pollution that was emanating from the transit system, buses and trucks and such idling nearby. So the UU congregation there collaborated with them to collect air quality samples and engage in a great deal of advocacy, which resulted in the city acquiring 7 all-electric city buses. And so that was a big victory for them and a true partnership, the kind of thing that we are hoping to do, where we're partnering with the folks who are bearing the brunt of these environmental degradations, such that, you know, we can kind of, we can follow their lead and together increase our clout and really make effective change. So the next step is that they are going to make it, they're going to push it further and make it a low emission zone so that the rates of asthma and other respiratory diseases in this community will continue to fall. So it's a great victory for them.
So the work is explicitly intersectional, and it is inclusive and multi-well-being, mutually for the well-being of all. So we need to be working with frontline communities in relationship, those most historically oppressed and most vulnerable, and indirect collaboration to alter and stop the ways in which charity-based work has leaned towards paternalism. What's on the bottom here is that if congregations choose to use the Green Sanctuary program to build accreditation or reaccreditation for their congregation, they'll be paying attention to their starting place and the actual actions and impacts of those, so we truly understand what is impactful, and then we can share and help teach one another.
So again, here's another example. North Shore UU in Danvers, Mass is, as they indicate, a predominantly middle-class white hometown, but they have chosen to partner with the Essex County Community Organization, which, as you can see from that top photo, is a diverse organization they have been helping out and by demonstrating and advocating for immigration rights, ending mass incarceration, and economic justice. The reason we chose this example is that sometimes frontline groups have priorities that are not explicitly environmental, and yet what they are trying to accomplish is often the result of the same system that has created all of these inequalities, all of this exploitation. So again, it's not about us saying we have to do environmental justice and we want to do this project. It's really about looking for partners and helping them advance their own objectives.
And part of my understanding, Susie, is that, for instance, police violence in a community makes the resilience, the capacity to be resilient in that community so much diminished because of the amount of energy necessary to survive and thrive under that police brutality, or under a school system that is not functional, or within a community where there's so much food insecurity. So that working on the priority with a community of color or Indigenous people or of Black people is, in fact, from our understanding, increasing climate resilience.
One of the things I might also mention is that for congregations who are not located in cities, and therefore, because we all know we live in a very segregated world, there are resources for congregations to partner with national or state organizations that do the same sort of thing. And so, if you are interested in looking into that kind of thing, Green Sanctuary can help you with that. So again, we emphasize mobilization, civic action, and you have heard earlier today these two examples of both of these have connections to the Unitarian Universalist Association, but and these are campaigns that are ongoing, that people can join, and no matter where they are, and feel very much connected to because of the marvelous abilities of the internet. So whether you live anywhere near Minnesota, doesn't matter. You can support these campaigns and become part of a greater civic action.
And so mobilization is really critical. One of the ways in which Green Sanctuary 2030 is encouraging congregations to move. Many congregations are already doing this, but we know that we need to do mitigation in connection to work for adaptation and resilience, in connection to mobilization, to increase our impacts and our leverage.
An example of a congregation that mobilized is All Souls in Indianapolis. These folks collaborated with frontline communities in the area to address some pretty abysmal public transportation options, and which made it almost impossible for people who were living in certain areas of the city to commute to anywhere else so that they could get jobs there. And so together with their frontline partners, the All Souls folks led a community effort and months longs of meetings and going to state legislatures and advocacy, and get out the vote kinds of things. And what happened was it was a referendum on this legislation, and it won by a landslide. And what was so exciting is that there were just thousands of people who voted for the first time. They had never really thought their vote mattered or counted. But because of this mobilization effort, these folks were brought into the political process. And again, just a great triumph for them.
So we are very excited to be able to offer this container, this compass, a way for congregations to work together as a congregation, to focus on doing the work in a way that transforms who we are, and to help us move in ways that stop or interrupt participation in colonialization and white supremacy, and co-creates a beautiful future for all the next generations and ours. So I'm going to invite Doris and Allie back in to add to the picture of the many, many ways which congregations can do this work, including many that you can use in order to work on your Green Sanctuary accreditation or reaccreditation.
Hey, hi everyone. I just will give a very quick intro. So for those who don't know this history, UU Ministry for Earth is a separate nonprofit organization from the UUA, and it was formed in about 1989 with the ideation of the Green Sanctuary program. So we have we're going on 32 years, and our focus has shifted. So the UUA took over the Green Sanctuary program, and then UU Ministry for Earth started focusing on providing educational resources, things to support congregations, but no longer leading the actual management and accreditation of that program. So we are still very focused on resourcing congregations and also uniting UU organizations around the work of climate justice. We've been doing that since 2016, 2014 with the Commit to Respond campaign. So that was the first denomination-wide climate initiative, and UU Ministry for Earth was one of the steering partners of that. And then we worked very closely with the Green Sanctuary program and the UU at the United Nations office to create the next iteration of denominational climate collaboration. So that is called createclimatejustice.net, is our web platform for people like you to connect, share resources, directly contact one another. It's a very powerful tool where anyone on this call, plus hundreds of other UU climate leaders who aren't on this call, can directly find and contact and share resources or make requests and invitations to one another. So that was our primary lift in 2018, and we're still working very closely with the UUA as well as UUSC and the state action networks and UUs for Just Economic Community and UU Social Justice. Those are our primary partners around this effort of really uniting and strengthening UU climate ministries overall and environmental justice ministries. So that's a lot of what UU Ministry for Earth holds. We're a pretty small but strong organization, and that's who we are and what we provide in collaboration with Green Sanctuary. The Create Climate Justice initiative, right? So we have the web tool, but from that emerged 3 priorities: strengthening mutual support networks and communication among UUs who are doing this work is 1. 2 is mobilizing UUs in solidarity with Indigenous and other frontline communities. And number 3 is catalyzing a just transition to an ecological civilization through partnership and civic engagement. So a lot of the ways we're cultivating those, action around those priorities directly serves congregations. It creates a lot of resources to support congregations. And Doris will give some more specifics about things that have emerged over the past few years as we've taken on those 3 priorities.
Am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone, Doris Marlin, All Souls Church Unitarian in Washington, DC. And I would like to tell you about 2 different campaigns today: Strengthen Local Climate Commitments and the brand new Drawdown Initiative. So first we'll start with Strengthen Local Climate Commitments, which really evolved out of the areas that seemed to be most necessary as described at the United Nations climate talks. So to give you a very brief overview of what Strengthen Local Climate Commitments is. It's for change makers who are ready to roll up your sleeves. You're Unitarian Universalists, you're our friends, you're with Elders Climate Action. It's all of us working together because we want a deeper community partnering happening in our communities in order to achieve measurable results on climate action and equity. So I've got the goals posted. Of course, it's justice and equity, partnering, preparedness. For example, Texas could have had, well, we all know how much better Texas should have been prepared had your leadership done what it was supposed to do when everyone knew how vulnerable Texas was to freezing conditions and what would happen. Network and movement build, which is exactly what we're doing right now, networking, and you'll have a chance to talk more together when we go into our breakout rooms. The other goals, act locally, think globally. In my next slide, I'll emphasize how far we need to get in reducing our emissions in order to essentially not lose the global south through no fault of their own. Be visible, have our mobilizations be visible, draw attention, bring more people in, be welcoming, always advance social justice according to our UU principles. And there are also opportunities to UU the vote for climate candidates. For example, the SLIC campaign is working with an organization called the Climate Cabinet to identify locations where we can support candidates for public utilities. This slide here is what I think is pretty much the summary of the Strengthen Local Climate Commitment campaign. Essentially, this red dot or red star here is where we need to be by 2030 in order to prevent global warming exceeding 1.5 degrees. Anything after that is horrifically dangerous. This is where we are anticipated to be, anticipated to be by the year 2025. If we pull out all the stops and use enhanced community engagement, we might be at 24% reduction. According to our Paris climate commitment from the year 2015, the US said we would be at 26 to 28% emissions reduction by the year 2025. Either way you look at it, we have a long way to go. And the best way is enhanced community engagement. So even though the SLIC campaign focuses on working in partnership with your municipality and with your community, it really doesn't stop there, because we need to reach out to the major employers in our communities, very much like Richard Boyce from Columbus, Indiana is doing with Cummins Engine. Cummins Engine is emerging as a sector leader in changing the diesel fuel sector like no other. This is a slide that essentially says, you know what, if all you have time to do for the Strengthen Local Climate Commitment campaign is to send an email to your mayor, that's great. If you have a little more time and can meet with your mayor and your city council to find out what progress you're making on your climate plan, or to find out why you aren't preparing a climate plan in your community, then the meet effort is kind of the midway. And then of course there's the sustained effort. And that would be to actually dig deeper into what your community needs and sticking with it until you achieve that. So to engage with the SLIC campaign, you can find out more at the Ministry for Earth website. to stay updated. Just RSVP there. You can download the toolkit. It's a wealth of information and a step-by-step process with templates and examples of how to take action. We have a national collaboration call every first Wednesday at 8 o'clock. If you RSVP to the link on the website, you will get an invitation to learn more. There will be an orientation session Thursday, March 20. Of course, other opportunities to be engaged.
There's one question in the chat for you, Doris, which Cindy kind of answered, but is SLIC part of or separate from Green Sanctuary 2030? Does a congregation choose between them or try to do both? Can you kind of?
Oh, that is such a good question. Thank you for asking that question. Because in the SLIC campaign, we focus on, for example, your community climate plan. And one of the key features of the SLIC campaign is to reach out to your local governments, your local municipalities, and find out the status of your climate plan. Find out who is working on that within your community. Is it addressing the frontline communities? Are the frontline communities at the table? What is happening? Providence, Rhode Island, and there is a training session that was a General Assembly webinar for 2020. Providence, Rhode Island has an exceptional climate justice plan that specifically addressed frontline community needs, and they worked objectives, measurements, and all kinds of targets into their climate justice plan to ensure that those communities would see improvements. So thank you. And that work is what supports or what can be part of the Green Sanctuary program. Your work doing that type of climate justice work in the Strengthen Local Climate Commitment campaign. Thank you for that question. So drawdown, it is a compilation of solutions for climate change. There are numerous categories. For instance, land sinks, food and agriculture, transportation, electricity. And within each of those categories, there are a number of actions that are spelled out by the drawdown, by Project Drawdown, that need people's attention and behavior changes in order to advance those areas. And so a number of Unitarian Universalists have studied this over the last few years, the Drawdown campaign, Project Drawdown. And together, we have come up with an initiative for 2021. And that is to come together and collectively do work, taking action following Drawdown. And we're calling it the UUDD 2021 initiative. And we will switch over in just a second. But at this location, it's game on. You can sign up to join the single UU team, and there will be a guidance document that essentially takes this already existing eco challenge, Drawdown Eco Challenge, and it frames it into a way that we highlight and focus on the types of climate justice campaigns and education that match up with Green Sanctuary, that match up with Ministry for Earth. For example, taking action to stop Pipeline 3 becomes an action within this initiative for which we collectively can, earn points. And so much more on that. Just be sure to hit this sign up button and you will get more information. And thank you so much.
If you are shaping the future, you are a futurist. Visionary fiction is a way to practice the future in our minds, alone and together. Visionary fiction is neither utopian or dystopian. Instead, it is like real life, hard, realistic, hopeful, as a strategy. Visionary fiction disrupts the hero narrative concept that one person, often one white man like Matt Damon, alone has the skills to save the world. Cultivate fiction that explores change as a collective, bottom-up process. Fiction that centers those who are currently marginalized, not to be nice, but because those who survive on the margins tend to be the most experientially innovative, practicing survival-based efficiency, doing the most with the least, an important skill area on a planet whose resources are under assault by less marginalized people. Visionary fiction is a way to practice the future in our minds, alone and together. So I'm gonna invite you again to do some chi shaking. Never hurts to do a little transitional trauma release. We're holding so much, we're taking on so much information. It's nice to give our bodies a little reset. So I want to tell you a story. There once was an old growth forest, tall trees standing majestic and strong, providing a canopy that shielded and sheltered this ecosystem, water like life nourishing. The wind seems to form a link as if all things share a common breath and synchronized heartbeat. Everything working in perfect harmony, irrevocably interconnected. From the soil so rich, plant life flourished, fully nourished, to insects like bees pollinating, embodying fertility, and contributing to the generational flow of life. To the herbs that certain bugs won't touch, that protect the plants that most nourish the animals, animals who maintain the population of those invasive species that the wild and full things needed some checks and balances. You see, death itself had a place as one half of the whole in reciprocity and in relationship with rebirth. When death took the form of fire ravaging the land that just allowed things to lay fallow and then burst into fresh, ever new manifestations of being. Composting fallen trees caused mushrooms to burst into life. Even the void or unseen was represented. Mushrooms, the visible manifestation of mycelium that, like the roots of trees or the brains of a human, form the neural network of the earth, allowing this old growth forest to transfer the deep, pure knowledge to all in the interconnected, interdependent web of life. One day, death, an unseen aspect of the forest's life journey, took another form, the form of man. Yes, men came to the forest seeking two things, one of which lived and flourished in the ecosystem, and that one that could be produced in this space once the old growth forest was cleared away. They were recognizable for their closed and tainted hearts, which like hardened shells contained a greed showcasing ignorance of harmony and the necessity that reciprocity of care holds for the health of all, themselves included. They approached the old growth forest with determined, if unaware steps, trampling the rainbow wildflowers in the meadow. They crossed to reach it. But before they could fully approach it, a line of people appeared. There were many people of different abilities, races, ages, cultural, and gender expressions. The first to step forward was a woman of color who shouted no. And the torment and strength in her tone was so sharp that even the birds and the bees quieted, as did the fervor greed in the men's hearts, as if even just momentarily the sound, the demand, the lament could not be ignored. She was the warrior, and she said that this is my body and my blood. This is my soul song and the inheritance of all children. You must go no further with your intent. Our grandmother and first American woman spoke next, and she said, I speak for the trees and the river and flowers and birds and the bees. You say your company who sent you to this place is a person, and I challenge you by saying, so is this sacred water and this sacred land. This nature has rights. And a lawyer stepped forward and affirmed and supported that declaration with the proper paperwork. Then a man stood forward and said, we too are part of this ecosystem. And he shared the science and the logic that dissects opinion from facts and remade fact into truth in the minds of confused men. He said, to continue in this direction is surely suicide, or more certainly a form of filicide, as you leave nothing with it which your descendants might flourish, thrive, or even survive. But just convincing them with the logistics wasn't enough. You see, this line of people were also interested in two things. They surely wanted to protect the old growth forest, but they were also interested in the unseen, in the rebirth that accompanied death, in the hope and possibility of reconciliation and moral repair. A non-binary person, one who neither saw themselves as a man or a woman, stood forward next and said, you must understand the ways we are this place and this place is us, the way we need them and them us. To explain how our identity was so much more than the limited thing we cling to. They explained the possibility of expansion, evolution, and ascension when we embrace our truest self, the one that could not be boxed or hardened or diminished. They explain how all these truths were reflected in the forest, the nature of animals, plants, insects, and mushrooms. A minister stepped forward and asked, when were you hurt? And do you need someone to listen to your story? The moss on the ground here is a soft place to rest your bones, and the shade from the trees shields us from the scorching sun. And there is so much scorching us in this world, so much that slowly siphons the bright rays of life from us. But this place is its antithesis. If you give it the chance, it will refill the coffers of your heart. And then they ask, when did you forget how the earth's heart beats like your own and how to synchronize your breath with the forest? But even with all of this, the men of hardened hearts needed more of a nudge. And youth activists stepped forward and said, have you no shame? We have in some cases put our education aside to be present and to combat this destruction. Because our presence calls others forward, and we recognize that if we don't step forward to stop this, there may not be enough bodies on the line, and this is my future you are trying to steal while we all sleep. And then children stepped forward and they held in their hands crafts, dream catchers, and spiraled constructions. One even had a letter, and this one spoke saying, I harvested the ink from the forest. And we all created a reminder to show you how much joy and magic is here. Magic you may wipe from the earth if you don't give this more thought. They spoke of games they wanted to play and picnics they wanted to share. They spoke of ways certain animals reminded them of themselves, allowed them to embrace their quirks. They spoke of how birdsong was at times a lullaby or an alarm clock, either allowing them to fade into sleep on the mossy ground or rise to greet the sun that radiated with such vibrant colors they were still trying to find and harvest the ink from the forest to paint a picture to convey it. It was the cacophony of voices that turned the tide, cemented in by this act of innocence, speaking truth to power and inviting in participation in play that kindled the heart. This allowed those with hardened hearts to begin to soften and the two lines to shift, becoming a circle right there in that meadow, a circle of gathering, storytelling, nourishing meals, and community. I want to leave you with a couple quotes. Tony Cade Bambara has taught us that we must make just and liberated futures irresistible. And again, Adrienne Marie Brown says that we are all the protagonists of what might be called the great turning, the change, the new economy, the new world. And I think it is healing behavior to look at something so broken and see the possibility and wholeness in it. So as we go forward into our next section, I hope you will recognize yourself not in one, but in each of the people in the circle, the activist, the warrior, the nurturer, the innocent, the minister, and on and on. I implore you to hold this feeling of bridge building, of connection and reconciliation, of the revolution of the heart. and ask yourself, who are you among the people who oppose climate suffering or condone it? How do you identify with each of these people listed? And how are your gifts, struggles, manifest in connection or opposition to climate suffering? Yeah, we would like you to dig deep into yourself and identify who you are and how you engage in climate movement. What are your roles and gifts? And are they useful or effective, and how? Do they embody sustainability? And that means, is it doable long-term, or does it burn you out and challenge your capacity? And now we're gonna invite you into a drawing exercise where we want you to look at your gifts to lessening climate suffering. And I'll hand it off to Doris.
Thank you so much, Sahar. And I will share my screen and just take us back over some of what we've heard throughout our day together. Earlier, when we opened, during Sahar's grounding, we talked to bring to climate work. What is our role in lessening climate suffering? And so at this time, there is something that is very wonderful that happens when you close your eyes, go into your mind's eye, and get in touch with who you are in this movement. Who you are, what are your unique gifts? What are you bringing? What unique gifts are you bringing to lessen climate suffering? Where do you see yourself? How do you come to the movement? What do you bring to your family, your congregation, to Unitarian Universalists? So please take your crayons, your markers, a few things that will put color to paper and stimulate your brain in a completely different way, and make a drawing. And don't worry about your skill level. Make a drawing of what your unique gifts are. And just so you have a sense of how easy this is to do, let me share a few images that others have sent. So my unique gift to lessen climate suffering is showing up. And I bring a strong muscle, heart muscle of love. I'm an organizer and a connector for the earth. I'm a keeper of organizing and ideas. See that keyboard there and how it becomes all these other documents? And my efforts keep things pushing forward. I bring brightness to the people who are struggling to do the work. All right, so with that, take a few minutes to create your own image of what's in your mind's eye for the unique gift you bring to the work. And then we will take a few moments with everybody holding up your image, and we'll take a few screenshots and give you an opportunity to describe what your mind's eye told you. So going on silent for about 2 to 3 minutes.
Advisory Board and a member of the UU Congregation of Cleveland. After our closing, we invite you all to join in debriefing what you've learned with the people from your congregation or with others who attended as individuals. We've given you a lot to think about today. You'll need more time to explore all the possibilities. We hope you'll choose the ones that kindle your passion. As we come to the close of the shared portion of the Convergence, I want to lift up gratitude to all of you for coming today and for the work you are doing in your congregations and communities to raise consciousness and work towards climate justice. I want to give special kudos to the team that put this together. As you saw, it had lots of moving parts and was the product of many, many Zoom meetings and lots of creative effort from a wonderful team of folks from UU Ministry for Earth and Green Sanctuary. Ali Tharp was the key visionary and tech wizard, and along with Amelia Deal, Cindy Davidson, and Doris Marlin from UU MFE. Doris also serves on the Green Sanctuary Advisory Board, as well as heading up SLIC and any number of other initiatives, as you have heard. Karen Brammer is, of course, the Green Sanctuary Program Manager, and Susie Novak, Jean Burr, and I served on the team also representing the Green Sanctuary Advisory Board. Thanks also to Sahar for her important guidance, to all of those who put on the wonderful opening celebration, and to the people who helped facilitate the breakout groups. Gratitude is a key component of building the resilience we will need as we do this work. Another key component is knowing that we are all in this together. You've undoubtedly heard the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We are at a time of climate urgency. We can't sit back and hope that someone else will deal with it. But our single voices aren't enough. We must join together with each person bringing their gifts. That process represented the work of this team. Each person had special skills and talents they brought to the planning. And I think it speaks to what we need to do to continue building our UU climate justice movement. I hope that you have learned that you are not alone in your work and that there are many opportunities to work together within and beyond your congregation. I hope that as you debrief with your congregational team or with other individuals in a breakout room, that you will keep the inspiration of your vision in front of you to find your place in helping our world seek healing and justice. We'll now extinguish our chalices from this morning or when we started. Blessed be and amen.